Good afternoon here on the East Coast and good morning on the West Coast and really good early morning in Hawaii. And you've got Mike Dotterer on the dot, and we have a great show for you this morning. Happy Monday. Um, our special guest is going to be tuning in a few minutes from now from Hawaii, which is wonderful. So it's real. The sun's coming up in Hawaii right now, and it's gosh, out there it's about 19 degrees and some snow. So it's a it's a beautiful world we live in. And you can see our guest. Her name is MeiMei Fox, and she's a best-selling author and life coach. And she writes for Forbes magazine. She does about 5 articles uh, a month for Forbes, and she helped write this book, Bend Not Break, which has to do with bamboos. Just an amazing lady. So she's going to be coming on pretty soon here ball because he could do the splits and everything. Well, Patrick Mahomes can throw footballs from different angles, and he's quite an athlete. So with that, it's the top of the hour, and I am so excited to bring on my special guest. Let me bring her on. Hi, Mamie.
Hi, Michael. It's so good to see you. I'm good. How are you?
How do you like my background?
I love it. I couldn't ignore it. It came on. It was like, boom, Bend Not Break, best-selling author. Find out more in his ticker along the bottom. I feel so important.
Well, you are important, Meme. I am just so grateful that you have taken the time today from your family, because I know you're married and you have two beautiful children, and you're a working mom,
Yep.
a mompreneur also. I like to call it a mompreneur.
I love that.
And you have done so much in your life after Stanford. So I guess the first thing we want to talk about is I want you to introduce yourself and talk about, where you grew up and, how did you get to the farm and, your whole, your background, because people want to know who you are.
You want the long version.
We want the long version.
Starting there. Okay. Well, let's see. I was, lucky enough to be born to a dad who was in the Foreign Service. He was a diplomat in the Foreign Service. So I was born in Hong Kong, which is how I got the name MeiMei. So I like to start there because people often ask how I got the name MeiMei. It means little sister in Chinese. And so it was a nickname. My brother was in Hong Kong. We had a Chinese-speaking nanny, and she started calling me MeiMei because that means little sister, and it stuck my whole life. So that's story number one. You can find out how I got that crazy name. And then we lived in Washington, D.C. until I was 9 years old. And then my dad quit the Foreign Service because he really wanted to move the family back to Hawaii, which is where he had been born and raised. So we moved back to Hawaii, and I did middle school and high school here in Hawaii, and then applied to Stanford because that's Michael and I share the Stanford connection. And that was my dream school, and I was lucky enough to get in. So there was no question that was where I wanted to go. I loved the campus. I loved the good weather, and loved that this school encourages well-rounded humans with an emphasis on athletics as well as academics and all kinds of stuff. I loved it there. I had an amazing, amazing experience. And when I graduated, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So I went to the Career Counseling Center. And I asked the career counselor, what can I do with a degree in psychology? And she said, have you ever considered management consulting? I didn't even know what management consulting was. I'd never heard of it. But I went through the application process, and I had landed a job at McKinsey, which is a really great management consulting company. And I was so lucky to get to do 2 years there. In the San Francisco office. However, it became apparent to me during that time that this was not my calling. I actually didn't want to go back and get an MBA. I didn't want to pursue a career in business. I wanted to do something that was more purpose-driven and more aligned with my soul's calling, which is to help make the world a better place and have a positive impact through my life. And the career being a big part of that as far as I was concerned. So I was looking around trying to figure out what to do. And I had a friend who was a doctor, and he was writing a book about supplements for health. This was way back in the mid-90s. So it was before supplements are the humongous industry that they are today. So he was talking about like Chinese medicine and herbs and things like that. And I said, well, I love to write, so I'll work on it with you. And it was another one of those, it was crazy. It was looking back on it, if I'd known how hard it was to get started in publishing, I never would have taken this leap. But luckily, ignorance is bliss, and I had no idea. So I wrote a book proposal, and I emailed all of my friends, and I said, does anyone know anyone in the publishing industry? And one of my friends had a friend who was very junior at Penguin Putnam, and she offered to take a look at the proposal. So I was really grateful. It's like, just give me some feedback. Let me know if I'm on target. Well, she wrote back about a week later and said, I never do this, but we're buying the book. So amazing. So that thus began my journey as a writer. Thank you. And like, seriously, I didn't know that ghostwriting was a thing. I'd never heard of it. Again, it's like one of these things you don't realize until you're in the industry, that actually almost every book you've ever read that is written by a famous person, whether that be a celebrity, whether that be a business leader, whether that be a guru, is probably ghostwritten, turns out. They're probably working with someone because, either they don't have the skills to write or they don't have the time. And so they just hand you a bunch of material and you put it together into a book. Well, the senior editor on that first book, called Sexual Fitness, the first book that I ever worked on, she was one of the top brass up there. She ended up with her own imprint called Riverhead. And she said, you can do this for a living. She hooked me up with a literary agent. She hooked me up with my first project, which was amazing, which was editing Robert Thurman's book, Infinite Life. He's a professor of Buddhism at Columbia University. And it was just an extraordinary experience. I totally fell in love with his career for unexpected reasons. You don't get the glory. Half the time my name isn't on the cover. It's always at least in the acknowledgments. And I've done everything from write a book from scratch to take a manuscript, like in the case of Infinite Life with Robert Thurman, that was already written, and just rework it, massage it, cut, paste, edit, say, this needs something else here or there. So I've been doing that ever since. And I've had the good fortune to work on books by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, books on all in the kind of health and wellness, spirituality, and psychology domain. So all about, self-improvement and happiness. And each one has been like a mini master's thesis for me. Like, I've gotten to do a deep dive into the subject matter. I've gotten to work with these extraordinary people who are very inspirational, and I've really loved it. Along the way, I started blogging and writing my own stuff. And so I started at intent.com, which was founded by Malika Chopra, who is Deepak Chopra's daughter. It was like a spiritual website with lots of positive content and, messages about happiness and mental health. And I started blogging there, and then I moved to Huffington Post for many years. And then since 2016, I believe, I have been writing at Forbes. So you can just find me on Forbes, and I write about aligning your career with your life purpose. And I profile entrepreneurs and change makers. I profile people who either have a business with a social or environmental purpose, like a triple bottom line impact, or maybe they founded a nonprofit. And I mostly focus on female leaders, but not exclusively. And I try to tell inspirational and uplifting stories. So that's that. I can't hear you. Is there a reason I can't hear you, Mike? Wait, Mike, I can't hear you.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I was like, is something wrong? I was like, I thought something was wrong with my computer.
Yeah, well, my friend, I have a friend from Stanford. You might know him. His name's Jim Rutter, and he calls it dot block. So it's like, because as an ENFP,
it sounds like a football maneuver. Yeah.
Well, I try to mute myself, but I am so excited because what's going through my mind is I need you, MeiMei. I have books, and I'm so glad that you're not excluding men.
Oh, no.
I have books, and I need you, MeiMei, because there's so much that I have to share. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I probably don't have the patience. I don't have, I'm not a trained writer, and I would love to work with you and help change the world, make the world a better place.
Make the world a better place. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I'm also a life coach. I've been doing that since like 2008. So it's not a huge part of my career, but I try and see a couple of clients, maybe a handful at a time. So
I need some coaching, maybe.
Life coaching too.
I need some coaching. Maybe we could put together a package deal.
There you go. love it.
Okay. Well, the other thing that I'm really excited about is you write for Forbes magazine, and I
Yeah.
got a chance. I don't know if you know this. I don't think I shared this with you. When I worked at the United Nations many, many years ago, I had a chance to get to know Malcolm Forbes, the
No
who used to
kidding.
date Elizabeth Taylor, remember? And
Amazing.
and then listen to this. And then I was in the airport probably about 10 years ago, where I was actually a couple times. I've met him a couple times. Is Malcolm's son, Stephen.
No
Have you
kidding.
met? Did you ever meet any of those?
No, I haven't. And actually, yeah, no, I have not. Mm-mm.
Well, I just want to let you know
Everything's
they're both
virtual
very
these days. So, you know.
well. They both were very kind to me, very,
Oh,
and I just, they're very, his father, Steve's father, was very thoughtful, and obviously, his father. It goes back, isn't it 3
I
generations?
think so. Yeah. And I think now, is it correct that Steve has a daughter who's involved too?
Oh yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
She's
Well, because you write, voluminously. I mean, I don't know if that's the word, but you write often in Forbes. I said I've got to become a subscriber. So I went. Listen, I
oh
went to Forbes, and I just want to let everyone know they have an amazing deal for $6.99 a month.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
can, so that's for. I mean, you can subscribe. Or for $49 for the year, a subscription to Forbes.
I know. I always tell people, I'm like, it's one Starbucks. Come on, people. It's one Starbucks.
I'm signing up today so I can read all of your articles. Have you counted the number of articles you've had?
It's hundreds now. I'm in the hundreds at Forbes now. I think somewhere around 400 or something. I try to number them when I save a draft in my hard drive. So I have a hard copy as well as the copy online. But yeah, it's definitely hundreds. Yeah.
Well, this is a good thing. What we do on the dot, we ask, your background, which you did a great job. And then the second question is, where are we today? Now, today, if you watch the news, I always like to talk about good news. It's the glasses half full.
Me too.
But when you go online right now, the stock market and our economy. And you write about entrepreneurs. What are your thoughts, MeiMei, about today and the economy and the COVID and all the things that are happening in our world?
Well, listen, for all the bad news that we hear all the time, and inflation is a problem, and Bitcoin plummeting, stock market problems, all of this is real. But I just want to tell you that I profile people every day who are starting businesses in the middle of the pandemic, and people whose businesses have excelled and grown in the midst of the pandemic. Recently, I covered a company that just got many millions of dollars in Series A financing for focusing on mental health, specifically for children and families, because this has reached crisis levels in our current world. And so they're connecting people with therapists online, where it can be nearly impossible to find a therapist or find expert help in your community. And they're called Little Otter. So that's a great, positive, uplifting story. There are people who are starting, just pure social enterprises of kind of like buy one, give one. I found this company not long ago that was taking medical waste, like this blue paper that they wrap all the medical equipment in. So it comes to the hospital sterilized. It has to be wrapped in this sterile blue paper, and they just cut it away and they throw it away. And it generates millions and millions of tons of trash every year. And they were like, hey, we could use that and we could turn it into personal protective equipment. We could turn it into PPE, like masks and things so that's what they're doing. I mean, there's extraordinary stuff going on all the time. And I think the good news is that there's always opportunities for people who are entrepreneurial. And some of them are specifically pandemic related businesses, but others are just ones that, have excelled with online. There's a woman who has a driving school, and she had already transferred a lot of their content to online learning. And now they're doing the entire, driver school online. It's amazing. So I think that you can find good news. It's just unfortunate that, it doesn't get covered as often.
Well, there's that saying, I remember, if it bleeds, it leads.
Yes.
Another story when I remember working at the UN with the ambassador of Australia. Wow. And he worked before he came to the UN, in the 1950s, he worked for a newspaper in Melbourne, Australia, and his publisher said, you know, Dick, a good day in our business is a day of unmitigated disaster.
That's exactly it. That's right. And there's so much to cover right now, right? I mean, so much. But one of the things I love about Forbes, and I'm so glad you subscribed, but one of the things I love about it is they very specifically have this agenda of covering good stories. And they started with the 30 under 30. And I don't know if you followed that, but this was like back 20 years ago, right?
I was in the store yesterday and I saw the 30 under 30 and I went and clicked. I couldn't believe it was fantastic.
It's amazing. I mean, you're like reading all these stories about these incredible, they've had so many people now who qualify for that they've had to divide it into categories. So there's 30 under 30 in tech, in healthcare, you know, in like, they've had to divide it up because there's just so many. And then they started, Michael, you'll love this, 50 over 50. And so they're like, there's also amazing people who are starting new careers, starting new companies after the age of 50. And we want to profile and highlight them as well. So there's a lot of positive and uplifting content out there. There's so many stories. And I think this is what it boils down to when you ask me, you know, what's going on in the world right now. It's very easy to get depressed. It's very easy to get overwhelmed with all the bad news. But you look at people and you go like, you know, this is always how the world changes for the better, right? It's just an individual. And there are amazing people out there. And the 50 under 50, they just launched this year, 50 over 50. Asia, 50 over 50 Europe. So like same thing. They're having so many people who qualify that they're like, it's amazing. They're incredible people doing incredible things.
Yeah. And that's something you probably with the people you coach as a life coach, you know, we learn this all the time. You can look at, is the glass half full or is it half empty?
It's exactly
you get to choose. And I love your theme, MeiMei, love more. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, my mantra is fear less, love more. And I have been repeating this a lot during the pandemic, like a lot, because I think what it boils down to is when you get that kind of bad news, like there's a pandemic, the economy is tanking, the country's divided politically, you know, terrible things are happening. It's a glass half empty, glass half full situation, but it's like, how am I going to react to that news? Like, it's okay. It's okay to have a fear response. That's why I don't say be fearless. It's just fear less. So you have that fear response, but you kind of try to let that pass. And then you go to love more, which is therefore, what can I do? How can I be the change? How can I, you know, to quote Gandhi, how can I be the person who is contributing to the love more side of the equation? Fear less, love more. If you come at it from a place of fear, that's where it ends up just being divisive, blaming other people, hating on other people. And that ultimately is not going to get us to a better place as a society. So I think you have to come from a place of love.
Yep.
Yeah.
Love conquers all. There's no doubt about it.
No doubt, right?
Well, yeah. You are such an amazing woman. And I'm so happy that you've come on the dot and shared with us your background, you know, what you're doing today. And what we do is you get the last word and you can talk as long as you want. I mean, you can talk, you know, the reason I say that is there's a lot of these podcasters out there and they go on for like 3 hours. So you get the last word on the dot and you get to actually take us out and don't hang up because I'm just going to, what I'll do is I'll click the little button, end the broadcast. Okay. But we're broadcasting live right now on LinkedIn, Twitter,
amazing.
Live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube, all at the same time.
I love that. See, and here's like another positive side of the technology story. It's easy to get focused on the negative side of technology too, which there's plenty of negativity, but there's so much opportunity to connect. And I think that I will make that my final word, which is just when you hear the bad news, you know, take that in. It's real. I'm not trying to be a Pollyanna. I'm not saying that we should ignore, you know, the troublesome stuff in the world. It's not that. It's like, take whatever's bothering you the most, whatever worries you the most, whatever brings up the most fear for you, and try and look and see if there's an opportunity to do something about that. How can you have a positive impact on that issue? And that's what I really encourage everyone to do. And I think that especially in times like right now, where we watch the economy, spiraling out, and we watch the pandemic continuing, even though we're so over it and we so want it to be done. The thing is that like we can just get caught in that negative feedback loop, and then that just leads to depression and anxiety, and it doesn't actually get us anywhere. One of the best places out of that is through service. I mean, all the spiritual leaders say this, and I have really seen it in action with my coaching clients. Turn it into service. Find something you can do. Find, there's amazing opportunities now. Again, this is the plus side of technology. I got really worried about food insecurity here in Hawaii because it's so expensive to live here. And so I went out and I just joined the food bank, and I got out there, and I spent 3 hours a month sweating in the sun, packing food and handing it out to people, putting it in people's cars, because I wanted to do something concrete and hands-on. But there's also incredible opportunities online. There's so many things you can do virtually now, whether, you want to do like a online support for, a suicide hotline or whatever it is. I don't know what your thing is. Align with your passion, whatever is worrying you the most, and find the way that you can devote yourself to service to help make that problem better. That's
Namaste.
it. Namaste.
You're the best.
You're the best. I'm so happy to speak with you again.